So today we're going to do a video on, I'll call it a masterclass in skipping lures with a bait caster. Okay, before we start the video, I want to show you guys that I know what I'm doing. So we're gonna go ahead and skip around for a little bit so you can see. Oh, that was ugly. All right, let's see if we can get it together, huh? Since you guys are, I think it's because you're watching me and it makes me nervous. Ah, that was a good one. God, I love that. I love when it just zings across the water like that. That's the freaking best. Skip to my loo. Oh, sorry. But we gotta show you guys I know what I'm doing before I try to tell you how to do something. You got to see that I know the skill myself. So just show you that I know how to skip a jig, or I know how to skip with a bait caster. I skip jigs, I skip frogs, I skip shaky heads with my finesse rod. There we go, that's a good one. Okay. All right, guys, you see that I can skip a jig, or I can skip with a bait caster. So now I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna teach you how. Okay, pull this camera a little closer so you can see. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna talk about is equipment. I think equipment can be one of the most important aspects of skipping with a bait caster, especially for a beginner. Now, once you get really good at it, you can skip with just about anything. But when you're first starting, you're first learning, you wanna have the right kind of equipment. So for me, I don't think you need to go short rod. I know there's a ton of videos out there that says you need to have a short rod, especially if you're short. I'm 5'7", and I skip with a 7-foot rod. I skip always with a 7-foot rod for the most part. And I have no problems with that. I can even skip really close to myself, and I'm perfectly accurate with the 7-foot rod. If you want to try and go a shorter one, you can. The reason I like a 7-foot is because it can have the background, but it has a good tip on it. I just fucking get more momentum with a longer rod, so I like to go 7-foot. I've skipped with a 7.3 just fine too, but 7-foot I think is the best one, the most precise, and it's perfect for a beginner. I would go with a 7-foot medium heavy if you're skipping something like a jig or a frog. I think that's a good place to start, because most people are just gonna have a conventional bait caster. I do have a BFS, so yes, I skip other things, but let's just talk about conventional bait casters. So a jig or a frog is a good place to start. Use a medium heavy 7-foot rod. When it comes to your bait caster, obviously gear ratio does not matter, but I will argue with people that you probably want to get a little bit more of a quality fishing reel. You can skip with a cheap reel. I'm not telling you can't, but what I will say is that when you have a good quality reel with really good brakes on it, it is a lot easier, and you're gonna be a lot more efficient with it, okay? Less rat's nest and stuff like that. Okay, so I have a Shimano Corrado K. This is the older version of it, but the newer version is great too. Any good high quality reel. I know the Tatools are really great, the Daiwa Tatools. Just like I said, just get a good quality reel. When I spool it up, now obviously it depends on what you have, but I always make sure that I don't feel I'll show you on this camera. I do not fill the spool up all the way. Do not fill the spool all the way. Fill it up like halfway, or just leave some excess. But if you fill it all the way to the top, you're gonna have problems. Don't do that. It's not necessary. You don't even need that much fishing line, especially if you're skipping, because it's mostly a close quarters kind of thing. So don't fill your reel all the way up to the very top with line, okay? Just enough for you to skip, okay? You'll see with like Luz, they built a reel that was specifically made for skipping, and it has a shallower spool because you don't want to have a line. I don't really know what the reason is behind it, but I promise you it makes a huge difference if your spool is not as full, okay? You're gonna get less bird's nests if it's like that, okay? Now, when it comes to the brake system, the way I have it set up, this is my Corrado K. It's got 4 brakes on it. I only have 1 off. The other 3 are all on, if you can see that. 1 off, 3 on, okay? So I actually like to have my brakes really tight. For me, I would say, especially for a beginner, #1 thing is to have your brakes too tight rather than too loose. When you're skipping, I don't know what it is. It's just, if you think about it, like when you're casting through air, there's no resistance. So it's easier to have a little bit looser brakes because there's nothing slowing your lure down. Now, when you're skipping, it's going to go slower because it's swimming across, it's going across the top of the water, so there's a little more resistance. So your lure is going to be going slower, but your spool is going to be going fast, right? So you want to have tighter brakes. Now, I watched a video on Gerald Swindle. He talks about having his brakes loose. Okay, the man, he's unbelievable. He's so good. Not everybody could do that, okay? I don't think that's the right way to do it. Especially if you're beginning, you're just learning, I would go rather too tight than too loose, okay? So again, make sure you keep that in mind. Now it comes to your spool tensioner. I'm gonna pull this camera back so you can see. So you're gonna take your spool tensioner, just like you would if you're regularly casting. If you know how to cast a bait caster, you're gonna push the button and let it go. It should slowly fall, and then it hits the bottom. Your spool should stop, okay? You want it to drop really slow, okay, when you're skipping. And if anything, you can have it too tight. I'm gonna show you. It's too tight now, okay? It won't even stop. I can still skip, okay? No problem. You're better off, again, I'll say this a million times. You're better off having your brakes too tight than too loose, okay? So it could even not go. I push the button, it's not rolling out. Now I'm gonna have it a little looser because I am a little more skilled, but again, too tight is better than too loose, okay? Remember that, don't forget. Now, the second most important thing that you can do when you're learning to skip is you have to raise your rod throughout the movement, okay? It's almost like a follow through. If you played any other kind of racket sports and stuff, you want to follow through. So you're gonna start low, and then you're gonna slowly start to raise your rod. Don't just do, don't cast and then just raise your rod up all crazy. Cast and then follow through slowly upwards. Okay, I'm gonna show you. Have about, I'd say about a foot. If you're doing a backhand cast, or sorry, a forehand cast, have about 6 inches to a foot of line out. Okay, we're gonna start low and then raise our rod up. Okay, so we're here. And then as you can see, I raised my rod up. That wasn't the most beautiful skip. Let's get a good one so you can really see it. Start low, and then you gotta raise your rod. And just keep raising it up as high as you can. I honestly think that's probably another benefit to having a 7-foot rod, is that you can just skip, but raise the rod up. You see that? And when you do cast, especially if you do have a little bit tighter brakes like I have, you're gonna have to put a little bit of oomph behind it. If you have looser ones, you can just flick it, but give it a little gas. No, I mean, don't try to cast it as hard as you can, because that'll happen. But you got to give it a little gas, okay? So don't be afraid to kind of snap it. But again, follow through, raise the rod up, okay? That's the forehand cast, backhand cast. I have really weak wrists. You might not. You might be able to do this, but I personally can't do it. I'll try it, but see. I guess I can. It's not as a fit. You can do it with one hand if you want. But see, I just don't have the wrist strength to do it. And if you don't, that's fine too. You can still do the skip. Okay. You're gonna grab your lure, bend your rod a little bit, and then let it go. Same thing, start low and then aim, and then start to bring your rod up high as you're going. Okay, so start low. I keep doing that. Start low, bring your rod up high, okay? Now, when you're trying to get an angle on, let's say I'm skipping under something, keep in mind that if I'm going to go forehand, the lure is going to kind of go this way a little bit. No matter what I do, it's always going to go a little bit that way. I can kind of straighten it out, but it's not going to be perfect straight. It's going to go a little bit of an angle. Same thing on the other side. If I go backhand, it's going to go this way. So use that to your advantage. You want to learn how to skip both ways so you can make sure you get into different spots. Now, when you are skipping, here's a little bit of an advanced tip. You can, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Wanted, where they curve the bullet. They shoot it and they go like this. You can do the same thing when you're skipping with a bait caster. Because you're connected to the lure, you can change the trajectory of the lure. You can turn it. You can make it go around something. Let's say I'm kind of I need to make a correction, or I want to go around a lay down or something. I can do that. It's not going to be a huge correction, but it will be a little bit, enough to make a difference. And if you go around a pole, you can use the pole to your advantage too. You can catch the pole and pull the lure even more. I don't have a pole near me, so I can't really show you, but it's the same kind of concept. I'm picking my rod up, but this time if I want it to curve, if I'm going to forehand, I'm gonna move the rod that way, and I'll literally pull the rod. I can kind of thumb it a little bit too to help, and I can pull the lure this way as it's skipping. Okay, I'm gonna show you what it looks like. So I'm here, and I can pull it, and I can literally curve the lure pretty good. And if it's really hopping, I can really curve it. See, I can curve it as much as I need to. And again, if there's a pole, I can catch the pole in that curve and make it curve even more, okay, and get it into those tight places. Okay, you can curve the lure. I really love to do it. You wouldn't believe how often I actually do this. And if it kind of catches in the air, you can really do it. I do this with all my casts if I need to kind of correct it. That's why I like having a little bit longer rod, because I can do that. Same thing on this side. I can pull it and I can change the direction of the lure. But if I want to go this way, I'm going to have to go a backhand cast. Let's show you one more time. Okay, that one wasn't as pretty. I want you guys to see it. But you can definitely curve your lures, okay? You can 100% curve your lures, and always keep that in mind if you need to make a correction or you want to go around something, get into some place that you wouldn't be able to get into otherwise. When you're skipping, you're going into heavy cover, use some heavy line, guys. I use 20-pound test. If you don't, you're gonna have problems. Skipping, if you're skipping a jig, make sure you use an Arky style head. Sorry, I should have talked about that earlier in the video. And then use some kind of trailer that's really flat. Like this is a knuckle dragger by Method Lures. You can also, Rage Bug works, any kind of beaver style, but it needs to be flat like this and have a lot of surface area. A frog, don't use a poppin' frog to begin with. I think a poppin' frog's a really great lure if you can skip it, but it is a lot harder than a regular body frog. I think the pad crusher, the regular one, is a really great skipping bait. So if you want to start with a frog, that's a good one. Oh, one more thing. Mike Iaconelli talked about this. I watched his video on learning how to skip, and it was so brilliant, so smart. When you're fishing, especially in a tournament situation, I do this all the time. If you make a skip and you rat's nest, okay? Don't fix the rat's nest right there. Finish your presentation, reel it in, and then cast somewhere else where you're not gonna get a bite and fix it that way. Because if you skip it under there, you get a bird's nest, you get distracted by that, you're gonna get a bite and you're gonna miss the fish. We don't want that. We wanna catch every single fish. So make sure you pay attention, cast it, work it, reel it in, fix the rat's nest later, okay? But when you're making a presentation, you make sure that you're ready for a bite, because a lot of times they're gonna bite it right on the fall. Let's see if there's anything else I need to talk about before we go. I think that's everything. If you guys have any questions for me, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll try to help you as much as I can. Go practice. You got to get out on the lake and just go for it, man. I think braid is easier to skip with, so I would start with a frog or throw a jig on braided line. That's a good place to start, because fluorocarbon is stiffer, so it just gets bird's nest a lot easier, and I think braid is a better option when you're just learning. Then when you get better, you can start working with fluorocarbon, and you're gonna have problems. When you go skipping, just be prepared. You're gonna get bird's nest. You're gonna mess up a lot. That's another reason why you wanna have less line on the spool. If you have too much, you're gonna lose a lot of line, you know, and we don't wanna do that. So put less line on your spool to help with that, but you're going to bird's nest. It's okay, you're gonna get snagged, it's okay. You just gotta keep going, okay? But this is such an important skill to have. It makes an extreme difference. I talk to a lot of people that say they can't skip with a bait caster, and I'm like, dude, in my head, I'm like, you need to get out there and learn, because this is such an important tool to be a competitive angler, especially if you're fishing shallow, especially if you're fishing docks. You have to know how to skip a jig or a frog, okay? Or a shaky head or whatever. You have to learn how to skip. Make sure you do that, okay, guys? Thank you so much for watching the video. We'll catch you in the next one. Go ahead and like and subscribe.